My name is Tom Rock. I am delighted to honor my friend and our colleague, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, an extraordinary Teachers College alum, a trailblazer for open conversation about human sexuality and relationships. There's no better way to celebrate her than to welcome the co-authors of her last book, The Joy of Connections, Allison Gilbert and Pierre LeHoux. Allison is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and author and co-author of many books, and Pierre collaborated with Dr. Ruth for over 4 decades. When I was a newly admitted student at Teachers College, 1996, I remember Dr. Ruth was our guest speaker at the Admitted Student Day in the auditorium in the next building. And I remember her on stage, she said, if you pay your deposit and commit to attending Teachers College, I guarantee that you will have good sex. Yep, she said that. We all cracked up, and I signed up for Teachers College immediately. Dr. Ruth had deep affection for TC. I'd like to read a quote from The Joy of Connections. She said, "One of the proudest moments of my life was receiving my doctorate in education from Columbia University Teachers College. It's very clear to me why I did well in school. I worked hard, of course, but the other reason was that I was learning a subject I loved." End quote. Dr. Ruth personified the Teachers College mission in every way. Dr. Ruth and I became fast friends when I started working here at TC in 2003. She even came to my wedding. Through my friendship and connection with Dr. Ruth, I have gotten to know her children, Miriam, and Joel over the years. Miriam, also a Teachers College alum, is joining us today. Miriam Westheimer. Dr. Miriam Westheimer. So I've arranged some questions around Dr. Ruth's menu for connection, around self, family, friends, lovers, community, and technology. So first, I'd like to start with self. The themes of knowing and accepting oneself, being open to others and taking risks, emerged as essential ways to beat loneliness. Can you talk about this a bit more? What are some of the risks that Dr. Ruth recommends that we should take to beat loneliness?
We've already talked about vulnerability, and I would like to do a fun role play with you about how Dr. Ruth would put this into action from a personal perspective. So I walked in here today, never even applying to an Ivy League school, being very intimidated. You guys are a pretty remarkable group. It took me 3 times to get into Georgetown University. Truly, this is my true story, 3 times.
Wow.
So here I am admitting to you something that I feel this morning vulnerable about. And I might say to you in conversation during the networking hour, did you ever work so hard for something, and how did you overcome those obstacles? Instead of saying, what do you do for a living? You might drop a conversational breadcrumb that leads to a moment of authenticity. And if you can do that, then the conversational networking time will go deeper. It'll be more meaningful. And so that is one great lesson of the Joy of Connections, is be vulnerable as your ticket to deeper and more meaningful connections.
Pierre, one thing that Dr. Ruth, I'd love for you to speak about, what did she mean by embracing your inner turtle? Right? Can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. Dr. Ruth loved turtles, not necessarily live turtles, but she had a collection of miniature turtles and larger stuffed turtles. Her apartment had hundreds of them everywhere. She didn't buy them all, she got them as gifts. For the most part, people didn't know what to give Ruth, so they would give her a little turtle. She loved the turtle because in order to do anything, a turtle is safe when it's inside its shell. Nothing can get at a turtle. But in order to experience life, a turtle has to stick its neck out. It has to make itself, again, vulnerable. And so she adopted the turtle as the symbol of how people should act, be it with, their sex life, or just be it in trying to make friends and trying to make connections. You can't just sit there and expect those connections to come to you. You have to stick your neck out, stick your legs, arms and legs out, and walk towards them and do something about your loneliness.
I want to move on to family here now for a moment. Dr. Ruth was so great at that intergenerational connection. I feel so fortunate, to have an intergenerational connection with Dr. Ruth as my friend. And she writes, you write about this in the book, how important that is, from wisdom to emotional richness, both family and beyond. So how do you think older generations and younger generations can learn from one another when it comes to forming these meaningful relationships?
I only met Dr. Ruth in August of last year, when I was given the assignment of my life from the New York Times to write about her quest to become New York State's ambassador to loneliness.
Yeah, Governor Hochul appointed her, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and the appointment came in November, and that's when the article in the New York Times published. Dr. Ruth apparently liked the article because she kept me around afterward, and that's how the book started to blossom. But the intergenerational question that you asked, I feel that I was a student of hers for the last year. She and I and Pierre would meet every single week to discuss this book and learn her lessons that she wanted to impart. And for me, I have never been asked such a disarming question ever, that Dr. Ruth would end every conversation we would have in person. She would lean in and she would say, "When will I see you again?"
And then sometimes she would grab your hand too, right?
And this was disarming because, generally speaking, that communicates so much that you're ill prepared for. It's like, oh, she actually wants to see me again. That feels good. Should I be feeling good? Are we just working partners? What is this relationship happening? And slowly it began to make sense to me. She was taking ownership of everything about her life, including the trajectory of this book project. So it wasn't going to be left to chance when our next meeting was. She had a huge calendar, one of those monthly calendars sitting on her kitchen chair. She would take it up and you would have to fill in the square, commit to a time.
Yeah.
And so to me, the lesson to me in that intergenerational connection, don't leave your social life or professional life to chance. You take ownership. You have the agency to push through your own interests and passions. And it also has the capacity of making the recipient of that question feel really good. When she asked me that, I felt her warmth and I felt her light, and it made me want to spend more time with her. And I think that's a lesson that I will never forget. And now I ask my friends, when will I see you again?
So moving on to friends and lovers, why, Pierre, you worked with Dr. Ruth for, again, over 4 decades. Why do you think that Dr. Ruth chose to focus on connections between friends and lovers in this book instead of, the topics that she previously explored around sexual health and intimacy?
I don't know whether those in the audience know her history, and it's very important of why she wanted to do this book. At the age of 10, her mother and grandmother put her on a train to escape Nazi Germany, and she went to a school which became an orphanage in Switzerland and never saw her family again. She had lost her entire family to the Holocaust. And she suffered other bouts of loneliness, including in the orphanage, as she writes in her diary. I'm here with 150 other children, and yet I feel so alone. So to her, loneliness was something that she'd been combating herself. And when she heard the Surgeon General say that there's an epidemic of loneliness in this country and in the world, she wanted to do something about it. So friends and lovers, she lost her family. She had to make a new family out of her friends, out of those people she met, out of those people she became close to, and she clung to them more so than maybe the rest of us would, because she'd lost everybody at the age of 10, which is extremely hard to do.
Yeah, wow. Okay, thank you. Any advice for us or any individual to overcome the fear of opening up to others?
Well, here's a few ideas from the book. There is a section of the book about wearing a prop or something that would invite conversation. And in one of the videos, Claudia Schrader, where, yes, there you are, you wore the Yankees shirt. And I'm like, that is a great prop that Dr. Ruth would approve. First of all, are they going to get to the World Series? Like, these are really important questions. And that might be something that I would say if I was intimidated to come up to you during the networking time. The fact that I saw you wear the New York Yankees shirt might give us something else to talk about first, right? Just a great icebreaker. And so I feel like if you could do something like that, where you can use a prop to your advantage, a sticker on the back of your laptop while you're getting coffee, it just invites conversation. Another one that I particularly love too is that if you're going to a restaurant and you're alone, your inclination might be to get a table for one. And that actually can feel pretty hard, and you might feel incredibly awkward. But you don't have to sit alone. You can get a seat at the bar instead. So instead of sitting alone at a table for one, just go to the bar. The stools are placed in such a way that no one knows if you're alone or with somebody else, and to your left and to your right and in front of you with a bartender are people to talk to and to meet. So those are just two ideas. And I think the Yankees are going to clinch it, yeah.
Switching to community here for a moment, Dr. Ruth wrote that she wanted to be a cheerleader, a coach, and a drill sergeant, all rolled into one for her readers, guiding them out of loneliness. How did she play those roles for you in the writing process?
She was a behavioral therapist. She was very, very concerned about not having people think she was a medical doctor. And as a behavioral therapist, she would give her clients, they weren't patients, advice on what to do, things that they could actually do in order to have a better sex life. And the same thing with this book. It's 100 pieces of advice of things that people can actually do. As Allison was just giving some examples of wearing a Yankee shirt or whatever. And so in talking to us, that's the kind of advice that she would give us, pointing us in a direction of helping people find an activity, something physical, something that they can do that will make them be less lonely. If you come home every day and you feel lonely and you just turn on the television set and stare at it, well, for that particular time, maybe you're a little less lonely, but when you turn the set off, you're probably more lonely. So it's important to take action, and that's what she was all about, is taking action. And she wanted to make sure the two of us were working together and coming up with ideas and writing this book.
And she was incredibly impatient, I might say. This
No,
was a new
Dr. Ruth.
experience for me. It was like, you're talking about drill sergeant, that word was real. It's like, all right, so when are we done? When is this getting done? Why is this taking so long? I mean, there was impatience getting this book done. And there was also very little excavation of what led you to have this problem. There were other books that you can read about the genesis of loneliness as an epidemic. There were other books that you could read about perhaps the medical and mental problems that people face. The Surgeon General has said that being socially disconnected might take as many years off your life as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. These were not unimportant issues to Dr. Ruth, but like Pierre just said, she wanted to give 100 practical pieces of advice. So you're coming to her, you are lonely. Let's not go into why you've gotten here. Let's just solve the problem. People would come to her for sexual problems, and she would just solve the sexual problem. So, and she would leave, as she would say, the more deeper dive to the psychologists and to the psychiatrists. Let's just solve the problem in front of you. And so every idea that she wanted to be in this book is about, let's do this, let's do this. How about this? How about this idea? It's just 100 ideas to get you, as Pierre just said beautifully, off the couch, not watching Netflix every night, to decide that social connection is more important, that it has to be the tailwind that gets you to leave your apartment.
And we only had about 3 months to write this book. It was a very short deadline. So we ourselves needed the coach, to light a fire under us.
Last but not least, just want to talk about technology for a moment. Dr. Ruth had a complex relationship with technology, right? And she discusses how technology is both a means and also a hindrance for social connection. But I will say, she always told me about how many followers she had on her social media accounts, whether or not she was the one tweeting or oh yeah, Pierre was, right? Yeah, she would say to me, Tom, did you see my tweet? Did you see my tweet? And then she was like, well, really, Pierre wrote it, but did you see it? And I was like, yes, I saw it. And then she was like, and do you know I have 100,000, followers? So can you talk a little bit about that complex relationship with technology?
So she was old and not used to technology and wasn't going to learn. She really wasn't going to try. I mean, months would go by, she couldn't turn on her television set. I never quite understood that, but she didn't watch television because she couldn't turn it on. And there were people who would come to see her and help her, and then she'd forget. But she, as I just said, had been trying to make a family, make friends, make the connections with as many people as she possibly could, because she wasn't able to do it as a youngster. And so she used technology in whatever way she could. I mean, she was on radio, that was technology. She was on television, that was technology. She couldn't have done anything other than speak into the microphone or look into the camera. I mean, that wasn't her role, and she was very good at it. When there was a camera on and a microphone in front of her, she came to life, and audiences absolutely loved her. And that's why she was on The Tonight Show all the time. And there was one time where David Letterman had decided to let the audience run the show. The audience got to choose who was going to come out and be interviewed first. Was it Terry Garr, Academy Award-winning actress, blah, 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 or Dr. Ruth? Come on, there was no doubt they chose Dr. Ruth, because she was going to be funny and entertaining, and they were going to really enjoy it. And so, that's the way she was.
I'll just answer that just a little bit differently. I do want to give the full picture of the joy of connections. There's an entire chapter about how we can use technology to drive meaningful connections. I don't think her personal lack of using it was going to stand in her way of how we are all necessarily, she would say, living our lives. She did not demonize the cell phone or the apps that we all use. Instead, if you can use it as a tool to push in-person connections, which will always be, in her words and her thought, the most important connections, then that is the highest and best use of technology. So there's an entire chapter of how we can use technology to build and nurture and maintain and develop meaningful connections. Because I didn't think that she would want to be perceived as someone who is out of touch. And I think that she knew very clearly how we were all living, and she wanted to meet the reader where we are. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was represented, because I think that was really important to her.
Now I want to take a couple of questions came in from the audience. So why don't we ask, let's see. So we have one from one of our MA TESOL graduates who asks, we live in such a divided world today. How can we genuinely connect with someone who shares contrasting values as our own?
I mean, I think you've got to find common interests. If you're just going to fight, that's not going to make a connection of any sort. That's going to have the opposite effect. But we are all human beings. We all share the same emotions. Hopefully you're going to have some notice of this meeting where maybe you can think of, and again, that's the point of this book. It's not just our ideas, 100 ideas. Maybe you can think of something. What am I going to talk to this person about? What's there going on in my life that I can bring up that will make a connection between us, rather than focusing on the differences. Instead, you should focus on the things that can bring you together.
We have a question from Sydney, another TC alum. What recommendations do you have for embracing connections and developing skills for decreasing loneliness early on for elementary and middle school students?
Well, that certainly wasn't the audience of this book, but I'll take a stab at it. And I would say some of the lessons that Dr. Ruth presents in The Joy of Connections, I think are very well suited for children, which is be honest about your feelings, no matter where they may land. If you don't feel you have a voice, that feeling of invisibility creates a different kind of isolation that you will have to overcome. And so to silence yourself, I don't think Dr. Ruth would say, perhaps Pierre could agree or disagree, I don't think silencing yourself is the key either. Because sometimes the biggest loneliness, the most profound loneliness, is when you want to feel seen and heard by those who are closest to you. And so if you turn off your realness, your real feelings to make others comfortable, that's going to heighten your sense of disconnection, even at the youngest ages. So to connect with what you're feeling and to have a sense of self that you can vocalize it and feel safe doing so.
I also just recently, my wife passed away 2 years ago, and there's a school in my neighborhood of Bay Ridge which is being named after her, and it's an elementary school. And I visited the kindergarten class. There's only one class, it's starting slowly. And Ruth and I wrote a book about a turtle taking a chance. And I read the book to the kids. And they really enjoyed it. And I think they got the message that you've got to take a chance. So it's really a matter of not speaking down to kids, but thinking of ways to elevate the conversation. I mean, and some of them didn't pay total attention, and that's okay. They're 5. But a lot of them really did get into it, and they got something from listening to this book and discussing about it a little bit.
Oh, I love that. And literally sticking your neck out.
I have 2 kids, and I was going to say something just like that. It's like when you have toddlers, you say, use your words, right? Use your words. And I would say that is exactly what I was trying to get at before, which is like to own your experience and to be able to have the safety to vocalize is really important.
Okay. All right. Our last question then from the audience from Matthew, an alum from TESOL, our MA program in TESOL. Really thinking about the city, thinking about where we live, New York. What can a big city like New York do to help each other and fight loneliness? I think sometimes right? And big cities can be lonely. Any city can be lonely, but particularly in New York sometimes. So anything we can do to maybe bring people together in a big city?
I'll just say something that I do. I was brought to this by a friend. There's this organization called Meetup, meetup.com. I'm French, and I don't get to speak French enough, so I go to French meetups. And it gives me an opportunity to speak French, which is a good thing because it's slipping away slowly. But you also meet people, especially if you go to the same meetup all the time. And there are meetups on all sorts of subjects. But it's interesting, I mean, I've met people who come from small towns a 2-hour drive away to New York because there is a French meetup or a meetup of some other thing that otherwise they don't really have. But you've got to, going back to what we said about technology, you've got to use the technology. It's there, it can separate you, but it can also bring you together if you make the effort to use it to bring you together with other people.
And she would say, make your town smaller.
Yeah.
You can make New York City smaller.
Yeah.
Just in this conversation, there are affiliate groups for alumni. Join those groups. There are ways of making the vast TC community smaller and more meaningful. And as a kind of a joke to what you said before about if you come to TC, you will have great sex. Dr. Ruth would say, and if you buy the Joy of Connections, you will have great sex for the rest of your life. I think that she really was so committed and so excited about these lessons, one of which, just to touch on what you just said, is make your town smaller. And she did this again and again through her neighborhood organizations up in Washington Heights, where she lived for so many decades. Fort Tryon Park she was involved with. Yeah. I mean, so many organizations that Pierre could list, and Miriam, of course, too. But she made New York City smaller, even at a time where she arrived here, not even speaking English as her first language. So you can do it.
She even has the Dr. Ruth Tulip Garden in Fort Tryon Park, right?
Yep.
Really helped, made even the park smaller by having that beautiful section there for people to gather and come and just sit and enjoy the Tulip Garden. So thank you both again for joining us this afternoon. So please join me in a round of applause for Allison Gilbert and Pierre LaHue. And thank you so much. One more time also for our legendary alum and icon, Dr. Ruth Westheimer.